Hello and welcome to the Left Wing Podcast. It is Leinster versus Munster week. The Irish Lions have started making their reappearance, and all of a sudden it just feels like rugby's really ratcheting up again into the new season. I'm Will Slattery, delighted to be joined by an all-star panel in studio this week. Luke Fitzgerald here with me as always. Luke, how are you?
I'm good, Will. How are you?
You don't sound great.
I know, a bit of karaoke, a bit of partying on the weekend. Not built for it these days, Will.
Yeah.
With the early rises with the children, as you well know.
Yeah, well, thankfully we're not doing anything tonight that requires a lot of talking. Oh, wait. Let's see how you last.
Well, we did it to accommodate our star guest.
Exactly, our star guest, Rúaidhrí O'Connor.
Worth it. Good
friend of the show, back on the show. We're coming to you on a Monday this week. We want to fit around Rudd's schedule, and we had to have him on for Leinster Munster week. Rudd, how are you getting on?
Good stuff. No Maltesers. Like, where's the rider?
No, exactly. And Rudd was originally going to be joining us on Zoom, but when I mentioned there was going to be a lot of Harry Byrne chat tonight, he was like, I'm coming in. I want to have this face to face, more out half chat, as if
the reasons were far more mundane than that, but it's good to be in studio.
No, great to have you.
In the eye,
yeah, great to have you with us. So
what did you do? 32 minutes on the Out Halves last week?
Yeah, something like that. 32 minutes well spent. I actually feel like my points have aged quite well. I think when I raised Harry Byrne last week, I felt like I didn't get the respect I deserved. And after his performance on the weekend, which I don't want to get into right off the bat, but I'll just let that marinate in people's minds, and we might come back to it later. But I feel like, much like you kind of accused me of not giving your Mark Hansen point respect the previous week, I feel like my Harry being a fullback.
Not if I went that full on with it.
But that was what the tone I was getting from you. I'm giving the same tone back. But we can come back to the out half chat a little later on. Because
we were at settling scores in this show. But there we go.
Serious God complex off the host tonight, isn't it?
After 10 years.
Where do you want to start, Will? Come on.
I want to start with Munster, Rudd, because we had Andrew Trimble on a few weeks ago and we ended up talking to him about a few different things. We didn't get to talk about Munster really, and then last week, as you mentioned, we went deep into the out half chat, so didn't really delve that much into how they've been playing. So we have 3 match sample size going into Croke Park, 3 wins out of 3, but not convincing, I don't think, especially the last 2 weeks of 2 home games that I got to really kind of watch live and kind of dig into a little more than the Scarlets game week 1. You were there in Cork on Friday, so I'd be really intrigued to get your perspective on what you saw. Is there anything you've been able to discern up to this point going into Croke Park about how Clayton McMillan is doing things? Anything new that's caught your eye? Or is it similar to what you saw last year? Maybe that you haven't noticed anything. What have you kind of noticed so far?
Well, I think the fact that they've started with 3 wins can't be discounted. I think that's the starting point. And last year, they did start with a very inconsistent... They were an inconsistent team last year. They were up and down. They were just about to go to South Africa on a 2-game tour, after which point their coach left. You know, I think Croke Park was a disaster for them last year. They started really poorly. And then their season, like it had moments last year, like, you know, the La Rochelle win in particular, and the way they went out against the Sharks, you know, they went out in their shields, as Munster tend to do. They got their act together. But the signs are this year that he's put a little bit of, or he's injected a little bit of steel into them, and that they're finding ways. Now, it's such a small sample size, and I think we have to caveat everything when it is the 3rd game of the season, and even when you're talking about, say, Connacht later, like, coaches have come into this window with a plan to see players, to give players an opportunity. So selections are being rotated and players are getting opportunities in these first 3 or 4 games before post-November settling into more of a first team, second team, you know, hierarchy, I think. And I when you looked at the team that he put out on Friday, he made 10 changes to the team that had beaten Cardiff the previous week. So there's always going to be a bit of a check on the momentum. So he's come in as a head coach over Mike Prendergast, who's been promoted to senior coach. So the attack is going to look the same. Dennis Leamy's been retained as the defence coach. So the defence is going to look pretty much the same. With I'm sure he's going to put a little bit of stamp on that. He's got his own S&C guy. So the idea is that they're going to have fewer injuries, that they've changed training, and they're trying to load training a lot less so that they get through the season with fewer injuries. And I know their injury list looked terrible a week or two. It's okay, actually, because there was a bit of alarm 2 weeks ago when they put out a release with, I think it was 14 players on it, but about 7 of them were back the following week. So it wasn't actually that bad. At the moment, they're not missing an awful lot of players. Now, look, that's going to be proof will be in the pudding on that one. Alex Codling's come in full time, but he was in charge of their line out. So the second half of last season, again, that's not going to be a huge fundamental shift in terms of how they play. So I think we're going to see a bit of stability. In terms of what we've seen from them so far, though, we saw 1 impressive performance away from home against a very poor Scarlets team, and then 2 wins where they didn't impress, really. And Cardiff, I think we've seen over the last 2 weeks, Cardiff, pretty good team, and will cause teams problems, but Munster were beaten up physically in that game, weren't happy about it, and all week they said we want to be physically ready, physically ready, physically ready, and Edinburgh beat them up in the first half, and Edinburgh kind of committed a bit of harry-carry, got 4 yellow cards, and that's kind of why Munster lost the game. And their depth at certain positions, in particular halfback, would alarm me. Like if you take Casey and Crowley out, I think they're in trouble. JJ didn't have a great game on Friday. JJ Hanrahan, Ethan Coughlin, Paddy Patterson. I think the drop off from.
I like Coughlin a bit.
Coughlin's good, but in terms of leadership, Casey.
Yeah.
So I think it's early. They've got the wins on the board, and that's important. But there's a lot of there's still, I think, a long way to go with them.
Yeah, well, they lost Edinburgh at home last year, so at least technically on
the Six Nations,
in the points tally, they've accumulated slightly more. Luke, I don't know what you made of them. Like, it's interesting. Rudd says, they've conceded 10 tries in their first 3 matches. Like, they played the Scarlets, Cardiff, and Edinburgh. It's not as if they've been playing the big hitters in the league. And I take Rudd's point, like the rotation, a bit, the amount of players. So it's not as if they've had their full team out yet. They haven't been really close to that. Maybe a little bit across the first 2 games, they were a bit closer than they were on Friday. But like these 3 games, I'm surprised that they only won the last 2 at home by a point against Cardiff and a point against Edinburgh. Like I would have expected to see a little more separation between Munster and the teams they were playing.
Yeah, look, I think there's probably I'd probably agree with a lot of what Rudd said in that you'd expect maybe a little bit more continuity. Like there hasn't been, there's been a fairly big change in the head coach. So, what changes there? Probably more mentality, maybe some small things. Like he's obviously decided to retain 2 guys on the defensive side and the attacking side of the ball. And then obviously the line-out coach stays in situ as well. So, yeah, it's they've a bit of a way to go. I think the drop-off from Crowley is significant. And I think that did, I thought that did impact in my opinion, from week to week. And I think there was a big drop off in that area. And that obviously, your fluidity, you could see there was lots of guys, their timing of their runs, all that, because they were overrunning each other, were crowding each other out. There was some kind of silly offloads as well. So they weren't really able to recognise when things were like the passes weren't sticking. So they were still throwing them. So they were kind of bad decisions. I didn't think the kicking was great. I thought it was only okay. And I actually did think though, Edinburgh actually aren't that bad a team, guys. They're pretty good. Like, if you thought that pack was pretty good. And I do think, they actually managed the game quite well outside of the yellow cards.
Yeah.
The yellow cards were atrocious.
They also gave up a try, like after 2 or 3 minutes, like that blunder for the Andrews.
They went asleep for the Andrews
try.
try.
I have Edinburgh in the Sharks bracket of.
Should be way better,
if you were a fan of either of those teams, you'd be pulling your hair. If you're the coach, both those coaches must be under pressure. Because,
Sean Everett, he's their coach.
Yes, yeah, he's an ex-Sharks.
Well.
Yeah, but
that's just like
the talent on they had a lot of Scottish internationals. A couple of lads who went on the Lions on the pitch on Saturday. I thought Ben Healy started really well. Their structure, they looked like they were far better prepared physically for the game. And the first half they were dominant, and it was their own discipline that just let Munster off the hook. And then Munster, in fairness to them, found ways into the game, and their bench was very good. And I do think that there's a couple of players coming through, not in those positions where I think there's a worrying amount of depth. But I think Brian Gleeson is starting to look like the player we thought he could be. Edmund Adogbo.
Yeah.
Like,
you look
the
good.
man, the man is
carries. His tackling is still a little bit raw, I think. But
Gleeson or
Adogbo, but you could see his carrying. He's got the power. That one close to the line at the
Yeah.
end, like that was a big. Like he kind of shoved through it. Like
there's no 22-year-olds in Irish rugby the size of that.
And he hadn't played in almost 2 years. It was Stephen said 2023 was the last game, so it was like the fact that he looked kind of ready to come back in. I thought was huge.
They've been patient with him, but you put him and John Klein in the same 23, and you've got a serious amount of 80-minute punch there. You've got, Tom Ahern will be back this week. I think he picked up a head injury.
Line out though, Rhodes. Their line out did not run smooth.
But Ahern could play 6. You've got Ty Byrne as well. You've got when you're talking about depth and getting through a season, you have players of real quality to be able to get through. And that's encouraging. And Dan Kelly looks like a really good signing. Tom Farrell, as the game went on, opened the game up for them. Like he just found these holes that
makes stuff happen. It's funny. Like
I've never been. I don't know what it is on the eye. I just don't.
Even McMillan said that because he said he's an unusual kind of player. And I say he came in first.
But he was effective. I thought he was pretty awful for the start of the game. I thought he overran everything. I'd know, in fairness. So I'm not judging him too harshly there. But I am able to recognise it, and I thought he was doing that. He was crowding out everyone else's space. Haley oftentimes was in nice positions out the back, and Farrell overran him or was too flat. and kind of cut out any options to go across people and expose the kind of Edinburgh defence, or even to space them out properly. So could have just been that it's early season. There's a bit of that as well. Get your time exactly.
It's a good insight, because, like, to be fair, I've said it, and I know a lot of people have been wondering, like, no, he's 32 now, so it's not as if he would be like a long-term answer for Ireland. But say in the summer, he got Munster Player of the Year last year in the summer tour. People were like, oh, why didn't he get a shot in the summer? Or even kind of as a, like, it's not all about building. Like, there is international rugby also to kind of recognise how well people are performing, and people were wondering why he wasn't there. But you've, to be fair, have given an outline of maybe some reasons why the management of the Ireland setup wouldn't want.
He's kind of an odd runner. Like, he doesn't look like he's a, like, it's, I don't know, it's whether it's kind of flat-footed. It's a weird type of run. I don't know. He doesn't look like smooth, and I can see he's got good footwork. He does beat guys. He gets nice offloads away and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, if you ask me personally, like, I could see he's a good player, but I just don't think on the eye and physically, tackling wise, I never really loved what he produced on that side of the ball. To be honest,
was he called into a Joe squad once?
Joe had him in a couple of times.
Yeah.
Must be nearly 10 years ago now.
Because he's 32, like, he's like. Yeah.
I should caveat, I do think he's a good player, but I just, on the eye, I just never really.
I think when he went up to Leinster Munster level last year, he struggled. Like, I do think he had an exceptional season for Munster last year and was really, really important player. But when the interpros, I think if you're a Munster player looking in the Ireland squad, games like Saturday are so important. Yeah. Maybe it's stating the obvious, but if you want to impress Andy Farrell, you've got to dominate against Leinster. And I do remember, I think he missed Gary Ringrose for a try in one of the two games. Across the season and in Europe, in those big European games, he was really, really good. Yeah, and on Friday night,
he slips out of a tackle, and all of a sudden he's racing upfield 30 metres.
Opponents seem to underestimate him, and he can find holes. And then you've got him, Nankerville, and Dan Kelly, who I think is a bolter for this Ireland squad. If not the full Ireland squad, he could go into the Ireland A squad for that Spain game. He looks like an international rugby player for me. Yeah. He came in, like, it was one crisp left to right pass. It reminded me of what Harry Byrne put out in Leinster the day after. So he's like, they're building depth in certain areas, and I'm sure McMillan has ideas about what he wants to do with his squad. I do think they're going to be better this year, but they're picking up points like that. That could easily got away from them on Friday. That could have easily gone the way of the game in February, and they would have been able to go, look, we've won 2 out of 3. That's not too bad, but they found a way to win, and that can't be sniffed at. And their bench made a big impact.
Foreman's conversions was a killer.
Yeah,
like JJ Henry missed all 4 conversions. Like, they were in a massive hole. They almost ended up losing the game. It was so funny. Like, Coombs, it looks like it sealed the game. All of a sudden, they give away a scrum penalty, a kind of a stupid penalty at the line out, like going after the guy's arm. I think it was Jack O'Donoghue, maybe. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, the Maul is motoring into the 22. It was actually,
a lot of referees would have given a collapse for that one. So they got a little bit lucky, and Ben Healy's not going to miss from there.
So the yellow was harsh enough with as well. The first yellow, I know he's like close to the line, but it felt harsh. Like, I know he's in the passing channel, but
which yellow? There was so many. I'm trying to get
first yellow. I can't remember. It was at the row, the second row, or the 8 maybe was coming. He made a tackle, and he was coming back. It was the short side on the left hand side. Munster in the first half. The first yellow card. It was cute enough by Paddy Patterson. He hits him with the ball. It's not a good look. I just did feel it was a bit clumsy, and I don't know. They were on top completely in the game, and I was like, "Oh, that's the first real pen close to the line."
I think Mikey Milne and Dermot, Lee Barron are looking like really good signings, and Milne
in particular. I would put Milne in another bracket above Barron.
I think Barron's. I'm seeing a lot.
No, but I'm just saying from what I've.
No, sorry. Milne has made more of an immediate impact, but from watching the game on Friday night, watching Barron when he came on, I thought he made a big difference, and he's not quite as broad as Dan Sheehan, but he's a real athlete.
Yeah, he's kind of he's definitely like more slender.
Yeah,
like I thought he looked a bit like that in the.
He gave away one really poor blocking penalty though. That was like
driving
me.
That was silly.
But I think we have to not.
Luke McGrath did it in South Africa as well.
Yeah, but we can't focus on everyone's like every little like everyone's making mistakes. I watched Andre Pollard on Saturday. He
wasn't sure if physical Barron was. Do you know why I saw Milne come on? He looked physical, whereas there was one with Barron where he got hit. Now, it was a double tackle now. Maybe I'm being very harsh, but he got smoked, and I was like...
Milne's ability close to the line, along with allied with Gavin... You've now got 2 Gavin Coombses, like, who were able to get over the line from close range, which is a real asset to have. Watching all the games, I watched 3 of the games today, and watching them back to back, you're like, God, there's a lot of... Like, the game has gone a lot with close-in carries, as in trying to get over the line. If you've got players who can get over there from there, and we've talked about it before with Coombs, that's a real ability.
Such an important skill. Like, obviously, it's been changed a good few years now, but being held up over the line is such a killer, and it happens to Ireland so often. And I remember jokingly saying Gavin Coombs should give a PowerPoint presentation. If he's not going to be picking the squad, he should at least try to impart some wisdom about how he gets over the line so often.
It's my pet peeve with Ireland. And
but it is. It's 100%. Like, it's a learned skill. Like, if it is something that you can get better at, and he definitely has it. You mentioned Rudd, like the drop off after Craig Casey and Jack Crowley. I don't think it's any coincidence that like they looked their best in week 1 when Casey was really humming. Like to start the season, he looked really sharp, really fresh. He obviously had the summer with Ireland when he was in a leadership role. Like he is huge. I think he's the most. I think it's Craig Casey's team now. Yep. Jack Crowley, we complimented him last week of how he started really fit and sharp and looks good. But for me, he's the guy who makes them tick. I think they'll go as far as he will take them.
Yeah, but I think you can compensate the loss of Casey if you have Crowley there, but if you don't have either of them, so like I thought Coughlin did a lot of things right last week, but he had the luxury of having Crowley alongside him. Whereas this week, Paddy Patterson, playing behind a pack that was getting beaten up in that first half, had JJ beside him, and JJ was struggling because JJ was under an awful lot of pressure and Edinburgh were applying a lot of line speed. So if you lose both of your internationals, which they're going to do, and they're both going to Chicago, so the round 5 game against Connacht the week after this one, they're going to be going without those two and Ty Byrne and probably a couple of others who'll get called up, depending on what Andy Farrell decides to do on Wednesday. So that's where they'll be tested. Is their depth across the season strong enough to be able to withstand? But look, I think they were a top 8 team last year. They're already 7th. I think they can get up to that top 4. I still don't think they're going to be consistent enough to get to top the table or anything like that just yet. Oh, they did that 2 years ago. If you get a right run and Leinster drop enough points across the year, they can do it. It was my first chance to actually meet McMillan. I've done a couple of Zoom calls with him. They started announcing their team a day earlier. This is a change McMillan has made.
I just want to say I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Like in international weeks, we get the team on a Thursday, and it just allows them more time to build up and to chat about it and the talking points it generates. I'm delighted that they do it at club level. Munster taking the initiative off their own bat. I don't know what the reasoning is.
He just said he's comfortable with it, and they do a big long injury update at the end of it, which is quite detailed, which again is to be welcomed. But just even I'd done a couple of Zoom calls with him. It was the first chance actually to meet him in person. And like there is definitely a presence there. He's an impressive fella. How he is in a press conference isn't going to necessarily materialise into being a great coach. But from what you hear from people behind the scenes, they're impressed by him. Albeit, I think he's taken a bit of a watching brief, and they're still figuring out what he wants. And he's kind of letting them find the way, and then he's going to step in and make tweaks along the way, which I think is a smart way of doing it with such an established coaching ticket.
Yeah, because it's interesting. Like Mike Prendergast is still there helming the attack, as we said. Leamy's still doing the defence. So, like, what tweaks is he going to be making? I'm intrigued to know, because he's not going to. I presume he won't go in and say to Mike Prendergast, "I want you to coach the attack completely differently." Because if that's what he wanted to do, would he not just bring his own attack coach or bring his own defence coach?
But see, this is so. I would say a watching brief. Like, I still think it's a decision to not go with your own staff. Like, he's made a decision there. So,
but they were kept on Rudd before he was hired. So it was almost like they put the cart before the horse.
Contract,
but the extension was announced.
I would say also must be financially motivated too.
There's a bit of that. Yeah, but there's a bit of that. But there's also, I think.
They're good people too, by the way. I'm just
saying
that's still a decision. Like, he could have said, "No, I'm not coming in if I don't have my own guys." Like, that's it. Like, so.
And I think it's
either he's done that or he's met the guys and he said, "Okay, that's fine. They're good people."
Highly regarded.
I think it's more about standards. I think what he wants to do is hold them to a high standard of what he expects in terms of the execution. So he's not going to tell you what to do, but he's going to judge you on how you do it and how you conduct yourself across the week, how good or bad training is. I don't think he'll tolerate low standards. I think in the last couple of years, there probably has been a bit of a tolerance of mistakes or I think like
more. They seem
when you watch
when you hear when Roundtree was there, it was more about like kicking the crap out of each other. There's people absolutely in bits come the weekend, and like you wonder where the standards were elsewhere. It was a bit loose. It's interesting you say that.
Well, I think that's where they see the improvement, because they have good players and they have good coaches, but they've been inconsistent. They've been inconsistent within games and they've been inconsistent across the season. But they've lost an awful lot of experience. So Peter O'Mahony and Stephen Archer were actually there together with their kids, sitting amongst the players. O'Mahony was sitting basically last time I was in Musgrave Park. He was sitting there having come off injured. I think he got a shoulder injury just before November Internationals last year, and here he was again sitting, but this time with a peak cap, roaring at the referee, celebrating the winning try with gusto. It was great. Like, cause even I was listening to Bernard Jackman earlier saying that there's not a lot of ex-pros just go to games unless they're there to do a job. But here he was, still in amongst it. I guess it's his local ground. His dad was there as well, and it was cool to see it. But he still is emotionally invested in it as ever. So, like, it is like, but that you still have to remember that they've lost. Like, anytime I watch that Access Munster, and they do a team talk, Byrne would speak and then he'd hand over to O'Mahony. He was still the captain until he left, even though he didn't have the official role or responsibility, and he was such an important figure. And to take a player of that stature away, Casey's filling that void. I'm sure Ty Byrne is this week now that he's back, and he'll make a big difference this week as well. But there has been a significant change again. And I mean, all you have to do is read Conor Murray's book or read the extracts. That change is what the senior players put down in a large part, as well as the dud signings, to the fact that they haven't been able to achieve what they wanted to achieve. They want consistency of message, and this has been another summer of upheaval. And the hope is they've identified the right guy, and by retaining their assistants and holding everyone to a higher standard, they'll get results. So it's early days. I don't think we can judge them, and I think Saturday this whole way that the season has changed from starting in September to basically starting in October. Everything's a bit rushed, and Saturday, like Munster is feeling like it's very early in the season, and then the Chicago's feeling very early as well.
To your point about the start about kind of, I suppose, the rotation, like the club season only really starts post November. There's a 7-match block post-November when there's 2 Champions Cup games, 3 Interpros and 2 more Champions Cup games before the Six Nations. That's when the rugby really starts for club level. Like Leinster, Munster, technically yes, but they haven't. There's been lots of mixing and matching and chopping and changing. The first concerted period of like club rugby with all the frontliners being involved week in, week out won't be until that 7-match block between the end of November and the Six Nations.
Stuart Lancaster told the Connacht players everyone's getting a chance in the first 3 games, and then their second game was called off because of Storm Amy. So he basically went over to Cardiff with a team that was picked to play against the Scarlets, pushed everything back by a week. So the team that was picked to play against the Scarlets in week 2 ends up playing Cardiff in week 3. The Lions don't get back for another week because this happened. Like everything's pre-planned here. There's no necessarily picking around form. Everyone, especially the new coaches, are trying to get a look at players. There's no continuity, no cohesion from week to week. Lads are getting rested. It's a bit of a mess, and it's going to be. Yeah, you're right. Like it's the rhythm. Really, the club season gets going after the Six Nations when we get into kind of knockout rugby and everyone's playing.
No, I don't think so.
But there is
that period. That 7-match period is good.
Christmas, all the internationals get pulled out for like 2 or 3 weeks, so you don't get that consistency either. But it's better. It's definitely more of a rhythm.
They get one of them generally, don't they?
I think that 7 matches.
Yeah, one of the 3.
Things got heat up. I think in those 7 matches. So we'll move on to that's Munster then ahead of Saturday. We'll move on to Leinster. Leinster 31, Sharks 5. Obviously, the Sharks have struggled at the start of the season, but Leinster were a lot better. Like I know it wasn't they were at home rather than being in South Africa, but they were a lot sharper. They just played a lot better. And I know they had some big names back, like Josh van der Fleer came straight in. He looked really, really good. Like Ronan Kelleher, James Lowe was back. Jamie Osborne.
Kelleher was really
good. They all the Lions guys looked really clued in. But even the guys who had been in South Africa looked better. I thought maybe just home comfort or maybe just having their eye in a little bit more. But generally, I just thought it was a much better.
I thought a lot of it was down to better quality around them. Like I thought Osborne looked classy at 15. Like some of the passing was beautiful. One or two checked. He checked Jimmy O'Brien at one, and he was harsh on himself. You could see he was kind of harsh on himself. I think Jimmy O'Brien might have had a poor kick off the back of it or something. But the rest of his passing, I thought was really nice. He looked quick. He looked big. I thought he looked big. I don't know if you were looking at Osborne. He looked strong. So I was really impressed with him. Interested to see if 15 continues on for him. You know, he looks certainly better than anything they've had in there so far this year. And with the passing ability that he has alongside that, it releases all the quality that they have on the outside. You know, like the Tommy O'Brien, you would imagine, come back in this weekend if he's fit to go. And Lowe, I mean, I thought he looked fresh, he looked good. That was a lovely little grubber inside for Osborne off that little break.
Nice little step by Osborne at the end.
Yeah, it was nice. It was good. Like he looked strong finishing the thing. So yeah, there was lots to be positive about. Like I thought Kelleher was outstanding. I thought Furlong makes a big difference as well. Like just even the clear outs at the ruck, you can see a difference in those guys. I actually thought that McCarthy was good. Yeah. I really liked him.
Paddy McCarthy was really good.
He was robust. I even think Van der Fleer's try. It was Van der Fleer's try, wasn't it? It was Van der Fleer got the try, yeah. And it looked soft, but if you looked at it, it was a lovely little touch by. I think McCarthy gets in late and just kind of. Yeah, I think he takes a short line, but puts the hands up and it flashes by him. Now it's a lovely little pass by him, but it just holds the defender for half a second, and it looks so easy. Now you would be disappointed if it was your team that missed the tackle on Van der Fleer or had such a soft attempt at it at least. Well. But it's a beautiful pass. But the little hands out, a little flash by them, it just holds the defender right in front of him, and it gives Van der Fleer that soft edge to attack for him. So he was good, and he looked strong in the contact. Like the Sharks are not, like even if they're not playing well, they have some physical guys, and he was very direct. I really like that. Like he was looking for contact.
Jack Boyle was watching on, going on. Like,
well, that's good.
You've just seen off Keane Healy, and suddenly, First, I remember going to the 2023 Under-20s World Cup final, and Prendergast was playing, Brian Gleeson was playing, but the player I was most excited about coming away from that tournament was Paddy McCarthy, and it's taken him a couple of years to kind of break through. We all knew that he was, obviously Joe's younger brother, and he's played a lot with Trinity, but the stories you hear about him, he's fearless, he's got an attitude, and he is starting to put it all together, and you could see it in that second game in South Africa when he played against the Bulls. I thought he looked really good within that game, as well as the work with the ball. There's an incident, I think it's in the either in the second half or late in the first half, where Chizuka, the big athletic second row, gets a ball in the backfield and is attempting to break out, and he's like Ryan Baird, but he's even quicker, and McCarthy chops him down. Next phase, McCarthy's back on his feet and wins a poach penalty. He's brilliant on the ground as well. His attitude was great, and it's interesting to see players like that put in with two lions in the front row. He suddenly comes up a level. And he thrived. And now he's suddenly, I'm not saying he's gone to Chicago or anything like that necessarily, but he's definitely, he was in the Ireland squad during the summer. He didn't get capped. He's still behind Boyle and probably Mikey Milne, but he's putting pressure on them. So you've got a real player. Saturday, the selection this week will tell us a lot, but I think Boyle is ahead of him.
He hasn't played much rugby, as good as he was on Saturday.
Boyle played a lot of rugby?
Yeah, Boyle's got about
for Ireland, the Six Nations.
Yeah, but a lot of rugby. I don't know.
I thought Boyle was really good when he came off the bench. In response, I thought he skittled lads out of the way.
I said Michael Milne. I was talking about Michael Milne, but played a bit more rugby. But Boyle has played it.
Boyle's played in Six Nations.
A lot seems a lot, to me.
Oh no, but Boyle played in that Wales game that was tough. Boyle was good.
Yeah, in the URC final.
I'm not saying he's not good. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying a lot. A lot seems like it's a big word, a big description.
It's not a lot. I don't think he's massively ahead of Paddy McCarthy, but he's definitely ahead of him. And he's put together more. And usually what they do is they put lads in for 2 or 3 games and they take them out and kind of and I think when Boyle would be on the bench for Ireland and Chicago, I would fully expect that. So I'd say McCarthy won't be in the full squad.
Okay.
He'll play against Zebra, and he'll probably play in the A game against Spain.
I just thought it was more a live debate.
Oh, definitely.
You know what I mean?
There's a few of those,
rather than a foregone conclusion.
For me, it's that 7-match block I mentioned where he can get a lot of opportunities.
The problem in November is we don't have 7 games beforehand where players can actually put together a body work. McCarthy and Harry Byrne, who I know we're going to talk about, have had one really good performance. But the squad's been named on Wednesday. It's just too little of a body
was
work.
Probably picked before the weekend.
Oh, probably. Yeah. I mean, Farrell's open-minded, but
I'd say we'll see the squad.
Is he that open-minded? I don't know. He feels like he.
I think around some
he makes a call.
I'd say third choice 10. Loosehead, I think, is open, and I know they like McCarthy. They love Joe, and he's a chip off the old block. He's got a bit about him. He's got a bit of attitude. He's no fear, as I said, and I think Farrell will like that. There's a bit of edges to be knocked off, but it looks like Leinster have done the hard work there as well, which is good. And he will play for Ireland. It's just a matter of when.
Really? Okay.
Thomas Clarkson's having a good season as well so far. Let's talk about Harry Byrne then. I mentioned last week that I was hoping to see him play on Saturday just because I didn't think Sam Prendergast had been playing well. He got man of the match. Bernard Jackman gave him man of the match on the TV coverage. I did think he played really well. I thought he looked sharp. I thought he did things with the pace that I thought was lacking from Sam Prendergast in the previous games. What did you make of his performance? For me, he should be starting this Saturday. He won't be, but I think he should be starting against Munster. I know it was one game, but it kind of reinforced what I was thinking anyway.
You're not taking away Prendergast against Crowley at Croke Park. Sure.
Oh, right, yeah, Road will be
building towards. But they've never played against each other.
It's funny, because I saw your newsletter today, and it was like finally we get to see them play against each other, and it's like, well, I think it should be Harry Byrne.
I'm pretty confident. Based on I've just come from Leinster press conference, I'm pretty confident it is not. I don't think he's going to be in there, but I do think if you were picking week on week. Look, these teams, as I said earlier, are being picked on spreadsheets before the season starts. You can argue that's the wrong approach, but from an Ireland perspective, Andy Farrell needs Sam Prendergast to play with the Ireland team before Chicago because he's probably going to start in Chicago. You may disagree with that.
That's like cart and horse. I guess.
But if he plays badly, then
Leo Cullen didn't pick Sam Prendergast until Andy Farrell picked him.
Yeah.
So will it take Andy Farrell picking Harry Byrne for Leo Cullen to be like, actually, maybe I will pick him?
Well. Probably.
And I'd say I'm not just going off the one game on Saturday and saying Harry Byrne is the new cost 11. I'm dumping everyone else because I've been pretty consistent. When Sam Prendergast was promoted last year, I think we were both a little questioning as to whether he had the club level body of work to justify it. And now
this is the Irish. Graham Rowntree did not drop Joey Carberry until Andy Farrell picked Jack Crowley ahead of him. And then suddenly Joey Carberry, it was almost like Graham Rowntree had permission to drop Joey Carberry at that point. So this is not just a Leinster thing. the RFU have massive influence, and Andy Farrell has massive influence, especially at this point of the season when we have the biggest game of Ireland's, the joint biggest game of Ireland's season is in 2 weeks' time or 2.5 weeks' time, and most of the players only have one outing beforehand. And Andy Farrell is looking
season, are you counting
of the November window?
Yeah.
But like playing the All Blacks and playing South Africa, I think are pretty significant in terms of the World Cup window, maintaining your momentum as a team, but getting Farrell back. So I do think that it is important to get Prendergast, if he is in line for that, another game. I think dropping Prendergast at this point, if Harry Byrne, unless Harry Byrne is going to be playing in Chicago, it would be a questionable decision.
By who?
So,
by Leo Cullen?
No, well, like Leo Cullen's not making this in an isolation. The Irish system is supposed to be completely aligned. So it's, this is not. That's the way the Irish system.
No, like
when it comes
Harry
to the
Byrne,
Champions Cup,
I don't expect Harry Byrne to play out on Saturday. I'm just saying the idea that like after the first 3 matches, Leo Cullen wouldn't be like, oh,
why do
maybe
you
I
think
should
Jordy
start
Barrett was dropped for the semi-final.
because he wanted to keep Robbie Hent on side. I don't know.
It was an Ireland call. It was a Lions call. In my opinion, based on what I've heard, there was pressure put on. No, and like it's up to Leo Cullen to say.
That makes sense.
It's up to Leo Cullen to say no, and I think a stronger coach would be. But like Leo Cullen is, so not stronger is the wrong word, but like he is part of the system. Like the system is top down. Jordy Barrett was told you're playing in the final. So was Jack Boyle, and
that doesn't make any sense either. Then
it makes more sense. It makes more sense than just deciding to put him on the bench. At least there's an explanation if that's what it is.
Especially
the explanation makes sense, but saying to a fella, "Oh, don't worry, you'll be playing the final," is like, "Oh, how if that was actually shared with a player." It makes me even more angry about it.
Jack Boyle and Jordy Barrett, as far as I'm aware, were both told that, and that was one of the reasons there was such ramifications around that. So look, I think 4 games into the season, when it comes to Europe, say the first game of Europe, Leinster playing Harlequins, I think it's up to. I don't think there'll be any pressure put on Leo Cullen to make that choice, but I think 4 games in, when Chicago's 2 weeks away, there'll be quite a lot of pressure for Sam to play against Jack and give him the chance to play. But like if he doesn't play well and Jack Crowley plays well, I think Crowley plays.
That shouldn't like it's they've 3 games now. Like there's enough to say, and it's close enough call in my opinion anyway.
Between Harry and Sam.
Yeah, and if you think about how Six Nations finished, neither of them went on the Lions. I think it's a close enough call to say 3 games versus actually this Leinster Munster thing, because like not like Leinster obviously had a terrible start to the season, but if they bring a number of their players back, it's like Crowley gets to bring a knife to a gunfight. Like, do you know what I mean? Not that bad, but do you know what I mean? To a certain extent, he's not playing with the same deck of cards, is he? Like,
I'm not defending this.
I'm not saying I'm always making
what my interpretation of it is.
We're having 2 different conversations. I'm not talking about Ireland.
Sorry, okay, but we are kind of there.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we're talking about how he should get selected on the basis that we don't want him to miss this. A head-to-head should matter in how he's getting selected for Ireland. And I just don't think it should. I don't think it should come to that. I don't think he's played well enough.
Because for me,
bring it back to where you want to bring it.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. I got to answer my own question.
And everyone got to talk about how well Harry Byrne played. I do think
we haven't even talked about his performance. Yeah,
no.
did you think he played well?
Yeah,
look, Harry Byrne should be right in the right in the mix.
I just want to hear. We don't need the whole Harry Byrne backstory, how he's injured all the time and now he did this. I just want to know what you thought.
His performance was excellent. Yeah. I think it was the best performance by an Irish out half so far this season.
Yeah, because I would push back in the notion that like if I think he should start on Saturday, I'm being like knee jerk after 1 game and Sam's 2 games, because like I'm going back to like how the last season played out and how I thought it was all handled. Harry Byrne did go to Bristol, like people saw those games and he did look pretty good. Like he wasn't unbelievable for Bristol, that would be stretching it, but he did look sharp. He did seem to regain some confidence.
Putting games together. Like Harry Byrne's biggest problem has always been that he hasn't been able to put.
You have to mention it.
Andy Farrell rates.
I know you do. I know you have to mention it, but I'm just going.
Andy Farrell rates Harry Byrne really highly. If Harry Byrne plays like that over the course of the next few months, he's going to be right in that conversation for Ireland and for Leinster. And they're not stupid. They're not going to pick a player who's playing worse than the other player. So Sam Prendergast now has to respond to that. I just think that the selection for this week is preordained, so Sam Prendergast will play. But I think as the season goes on, if Harry Byrne plays like that, behind a much better pack than the one Sam Prendergast played against behind the previous week at home, it was a much better
100%.
Condition.
And I would acknowledge
his performance, I thought was as good as I've seen Harry Byrne play for Leinster. It's the Harry Byrne that we all heard about 3 or 4 years ago. He's been in the Ireland picture since 2021. He's been around for a long time. It's just, and they've tried to fast track him. They fast tracked him ahead of his brother, and he got injured. So, like, I'm not surprised that Harry Byrne's able to do this. But the disappointment with Harry Byrne is that he's never been able to put two games together, or that he's been picked for games and not been able to show up. He went on tour to New Zealand in 21. Was supposed to start both Mary games and got injured over there. And look, I'm not.
The picture is a lot clearer for him now. Like, his brother really complicated that situation because he was a really top quality player. Maybe we all think that he wasn't that international quality, really top quality player, but he was still a very, very top quality club player. Probably only really when the air gets very thin do maybe you see Ross maybe not being at the same level as a Sexton or someone like that. But right below that, he's right in there in my opinion, right? So he was dealing with that. So you there's that layer is now gone. It's a pretty much, I think it's a straight up row between himself and Prendergast for that tension, and it's a lot clearer, and he should get more game time off the back of that. Now, if they go 6-2 splits on the bench, Frawley now comes back into the picture, and that does complicate it a bit for him. But if he's going 5-3s, I think Byrne's going to be in the bench every week, and I think that he'll have a way better shot at getting in against Prendergast.
And look, I live in the real world. I do agree with you. Like, Prendergast, Crowley this week makes sense. They are the two kind of incumbents battling. Like, as much as I think Harry Byrne played better across the first 3 weeks, yeah, okay, I'm not going to jump up and down and say Harry Byrne 100% should be starting over Sam Prendergast. But I think this is a huge game for Prendergast. I think not only Chicago aside, I think his Leinster path in the medium term should be dictated by how he plays. But I take Luke's point. Like, cavalry is coming over the hill for him. Like, he's going to be with a team full of Lions. It's not. He'd have to play very badly till
he was brilliant in Thomond Park last year, from what I remember.
Like, a man to match.
He has had good games. I think that he hasn't started the season pretty well. I thought he was fine in the Bulls match, and then made a couple of mistakes when he was very fatigued in the last 5 minutes at altitude, and it cost him the game. I think he's had the Stormers game was an absolute write-off for everyone. His defence is definitely an issue, but I do think the final against the Bulls last year, he fronted up within that game, so he showed that he can do it. I think he needs to make massive improvements there, and I'm not fully convinced that he's going to make them in the short term. But as a 22-year-old out half, I think he's putting together a decent body of work, but he's nowhere near the finished article. But even talking again in Leinster today, talking about the people who train with him every day, the coaches who see him, they're not picking him because of some
training is not.
No, but yeah, there's all this talk about how he runs the week and all this stuff. But you have to watch the match. I'm only just going about what I'm seeing in these games.
But I've seen there's lots of good stuff.
There is lots of good stuff.
There is, but a lot of that Thomond Park game was on Stephen's Day last year. It wasn't like at the back end of last season even. That's
just a reference point in terms of it being Munster. And again, he was behind the pack.
He got man of the match against Scotland in Murrayfield in the 6-8. I'm not claiming he hasn't had some good games, but I think certainly since the France game of the Six Nations, I don't know if it was maybe his confidence taking a bit of a knock because there was a lot of criticism. I don't think he finished the season very well with Leinster. No. The Bulls game, the Bulls didn't turn up that day. Like, that ended up being 21-0.
That's not his fault.
Sorry,
no, it's not his fault.
Northampton was the big one.
Northampton was, but there was loads of people starting to joint out against Northampton.
Not as bad. Oh.
I thought the judgment on him after the Northampton game was overly harsh.
10. So Ross Byrne has got absolutely cleaned at 10 for not taking a drop goal when they were there was a lot. Anyway, we're going back to something different. I think you're judged harsh in that 10 slot, and I think lots of people were concerned last year that he was getting shots that he shouldn't have got, and that any time there was kind of a really tough game and he had a tough tackle to make that he might get hurt, that he wasn't making them. And the rest of the game, I'd excuse intercept passes if he's trying. I don't mind those things. I expect that with someone his age. What I don't expect is the part of the game that the tackling part of the game. I just don't expect that. And when you see how Crowley was treated last year, I just thought that was atrocious. So I think in my mind maybe I've gone a little bit too far in some respects on the criticism. I'm more thinking about the more thing I haven't. But anyway, that's probably for other people to judge. But Crowley puts in that he puts in the tackles.
Yeah.
And he's not a big guy, but you can see he's physical and he wants to be in there. He wants to put in a shift for his teammates. I'll always try him. That guy will always look better in my eye than another guy.
Yeah,
that's just how I view it. It's just how I play. It's how I think about rugby. And I also think he's been playing quite well. And I don't know. It feels like when you see a guy that's been treated, it looks like he's been treated differently. It just doesn't help me take the foot off the pedal when I'm looking at him.
Like he did it with Joey Carberry. He just completely finished Joey Carberry after a bad game in November. And Joey Carberry, like we're in this situation now where what's Joey, 29? Same as Joey's in France. Ross Byrne, the two 29-year-olds, the two experienced out halves are in exile, as is Paddy Jackson for different reasons. The three most experienced out halves that have come through the Irish system who made it as pros are exiled. Like Johnny obviously Johnny Sexton kind of this is what I wrote about in my newsletter today. Johnny basically blocked out the light for so long that we're coming out into its new era, and we've been left with a 25-year-old and a 22-year-old who are being put under incredible pressure. I mean, like certainly in Prendergast's case, I don't think Farrell. I think if he'd had if say a Paddy Jackson, or if he'd stuck with Carberry, who at this stage has put together made all of his mistakes and is now the experienced player, but he moved on from him so quickly that he's left himself in this position where he kind of has to push one of them. He pushed one for 1 year, then he lost faith in him in the way that he did with Carberry, and now he's gone with the other one. I don't know if he's convinced either of them is going to be it's going to be that good.
I think he loves Prendergast.
I think he loves a lot. I think he does. But I think if you're right, if he doesn't put together the full part of the game, if he obviously can do the attacking part, but if he can't do the defensive part, when does he lose faith in him? And at what point does he, who does he go to next? Because there's no one else, the other two lads have left the system. Maybe it's Harry, because Harry's 26. He's made more of his mistakes, and he's kind of coming out the other side of that, and he now looks confident and ready to do it. And maybe if you did go with Harry, or he goes with Jack Crowley, it would allow Sam Prendergast to go and have a season playing for Leinster and making the mistakes in a more and developing his
more
game
naturally,
more naturally, because
pace,
he's doing it in a moment where in a place where we're talking about him every week, and if he misses a kick, he misses a couple of tackles.
I don't think no one's killed him for the kicking.
I
don't think many people have killed him for the kicking.
I think people really resent the fact that he was promoted ahead of his time, and I think that's been held against him, and that wasn't his fault. He didn't pick himself, and I think I'm not saying you are necessarily.
It was more. I don't think it was actually that he got promoted, Ruds. I think it was the way that Jack Crowley was treated was probably what has probably driven that a little bit of ire maybe towards I think that decision making process, because I think if you think about what happened the season before, Crowley was fresh off guiding Ireland to a Six Nations, so I don't know. It never felt right that was he was cast.
For me, to Rudd's point, for me, one of the issues I have is that I think he was promoted without a body of work to support it. I've always been perplexed by it, and I think it was actually badly managed by Andy Farrell, because I don't think his subsequent performances for Ireland were good enough then to justify the original decision. It's almost like it's been trying to retroactively justify the decision by keep picking him the whole time. He never put together the body of work at club level. Leo Cullen only went to him because Andy Farrell went to him, so it kind of skewed the club pecking order as well.
I think they've done what we often talk about, what we want them to do in terms of he is the guy they think is going to be the out half of 2025, and they need to get as many minutes into him between now and then, and that is costing the team.
But that's not. It's not what people want to do. Players
I think
we have
players
to be picked for Ireland. No. Players to be picked for Ireland without playing, delivering at club level first. I don't think anyone is clamouring for guys to be plucked from 21 who've never really even played for their first team.
I think Farrell was looking at Leinster going, why are you not picking this guy? So I'm going to pick him first and force the issue, which is what happened. So I think if he hadn't,
he had a great game at Bristol. Do you remember? He had a really good game.
That was just after November.
That was after.
My point is that he did back it up then a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So that was a bit that if you think about Six Nations and why he carried through to there.
I think the 10 succession planning has been an issue for Irish rugby for the last 12. 2015. What happened? Johnny got injured, and Ian Madigan hadn't had enough experiences in the jersey to be ready for a quarter final. 2019, Johnny picks up an injury. Carberry has an injury. Carberry had been the one they'd invested a bit in, but ultimately we ended up with Jack Carty playing a second game for Ireland in a World Cup in a game against Japan. What happened? They lose the game. And in fairness, Jack Carty played well, certainly in parts of that game, but he was the one who was thrown under the bus by Joe Schmidt afterwards. 2023, we get to the point where we're in injury time, and there's a 38-year-old. Andy Farrell has, in his book, defended this decision, but we ended up with a 38-year-old deep into injury time trying to push the envelope against the All Blacks, and he was clearly out on his feet. And then he retires, and there's no one ready to take over because no one else got any minutes. No one else is in the situation where they don't know enough about their out halves at this point in the World Cup cycle, and yet here we are with a coach who went in the Lions last summer and picked 4 out halves for that Lions tour. 1 was Scottish, 3 were English, and none were Irish. So he didn't believe in them enough to bring them on the Lions tour. So we are in a bit of a situation here 2 years out from the World Cup. And I think what he thinks he has to do is back one of them and get as many minutes into them as possible. Now, he said to Joe Malloy in, I don't know what studio it was in, but he said on Indesport today, I think, or maybe it was in his thing last night, but that basically there's competition there. They've both had a year. Let's see how they go. Maybe that's the way he's going to approach it, but my sense is that Prendergast is the guy he's investing in. But Prendergast has to repay that faith, and he's doing it in an environment where everything he does gets criticised. And there is a third option there who could come back into the fray in terms of Harry Byrne. I definitely think that's the case.
But I think if we see enough, I'm not one of those people that if I see the right things, that I'm not going to be well, that's brilliant. That's not you can only comment on what you see in front of you, and for me, that was the big hole last year, and I kind of obviously heard a few things about how he was, treated maybe, or how he was spoken to after the Northampton game, and I was expecting a bit of a rebound. I probably haven't seen it, and I'm kind of thinking, well, like, if you haven't seen it after getting your, absolutely reamed there, like, when does it change? So, and 22 isn't that young. Like, it isn't really. Like, you should be like.
I think it is for a top level 10. But in terms of tackling is something that
you either have it or you don't.
That's the issue.
That's my worry. That's my big worry.
Yeah.
I tried to be nice about it, to be honest with you, because I felt bad. But my worry is that, like, there's people, like, you either kind of have that or you don't. And I just do wonder if, like,
I think Crowley has come into this.
Could you imagine playing South Africa with a guy who doesn't tackle?
Well, that's going to be very interesting if it happens. I think Crowley's come into the season with a mindset shift. I thought he started last season poorly. It wasn't helped by the fact that Munster were in absolute chaos behind the scenes, as we saw by the fact that their coach left after 5 or 6 games. But he was missing line kicks. He just didn't look himself. He didn't look like, maybe it was the toll of that first year. Like, he had that first year with Ireland, and then he had a summer off, and he came back in. He wasn't on the pitch when Kieran Frawley dropped a goal against South Africa. It was the first sign maybe that his status was slipping. He didn't finish that game out. But he's had those 2 experiences. Now he's 25. He's gone and got himself an unbelievable nick.
He looks good, doesn't he?
Yeah, he went and got us, like, he got in with Gordon Brett, who's an S&C coach in Munster. He took 2 weeks in the summer off, and then he got in with him, and I think he's done a really top pre-season. He looks an incredible nick. Like, he wasn't, he come off the bench in one game, looked really good off the bench in that game. Started against Cardiff. Some of the mistakes that were there last year were still there, but his moments were excellent, and his decision making, and when it came down to the match winning moment, he nailed that, which obviously looks good as well. He picks up the man of the match, which helps. And Prendergast had two difficult games.
They were difficult. Like, it is in South Africa. Like, we should caveat.
The context is different.
The context is very.
But I do think that, like, Crowley is carrying momentum into Saturday. Like, absolutely, yeah. and I think when you're playing New Zealand, when all the players have had 1 or 2 games, if you have someone who's playing well and in flow. When you think back to last year, Ireland were really undercooked for New Zealand. So if Crowley's in better form and he's in flow, back Crowley, absolutely.
Yeah. And he even has to, like, for me, the key thing for Crowley on the weekend, it's probably worth discussing a little bit of this too. Like, if he is going backwards, if he is under pressure, like, so he just got to make his tackles. I think he's got to try and make as many kicks as possible. He's got to have a very high percentage there. I think that helps the team. Whatever opportunity he gets, he puts the team in good positions. Kicking's got to be great, and he doesn't have to reinvent the wheel. He doesn't have to go outside what he does in his game, in terms of the attacking side of things. So, like, it's just we need a really strong kind of performance for me would look like that. It doesn't have to look like anything special, which is going to be challenging for him. And that is something that I think guys who are coming head to head, against a guy you're competing for an international position with. You can't get caught up in that part of the game. You just got to play the game that's in front of you and do the best you can with what you have. So it could be more difficult for him. It might be more difficult for him. Now, the guys in Munster might listen to this and hopefully they do, because we hope it's a fucking super game. But if you just look at the internationals and the Lions come back into a team, Leinster should have too much firepower for them. So you do hope that there's some kind of parity there, and we get to actually see a level playing field when we're looking to compare the two. You want to like for like, you know what I mean?
Subplot everyone is looking forward to. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was thinking of depriving you of it when I said Harry Byrne should get in the team, because now I am looking forward to seeing it as much as everybody else.
Harry Byrne versus JJ Hanrahan.
Yeah, it doesn't quite have the same ring to it, but it will be one to watch over the November selection and then the club selection. That 7-match block I keep referring to, I've circled on my page. I want to talk about Ulster as well. We did a good bit on Leinster there. A lot of out half chat again. Not quite the 32 minutes we reached last week, but probably.
That's an interesting dynamic. It's very important for Ireland.
I really hope everyone else who listens finds it as interesting as well.
Well, I think it's
or else.
You made a really good point last week. I think it was you made it about Ireland's worst player is probably their 10 in their squad, and so it's such an important position. So that's why the conversation, just for our listeners, that's why we're going into it in that much depth. Not that they're bad players, but just in terms of what they have around them, they've got some serious quality around them, like really top quality, like players, like world player of the year winners and nominees and all that. So it's not often Irish 10s have had that luxury around them.
That's a more positive way of framing it than way
He's also the worst player in a very good team. Like, there's in a collection of very good players.
That's my point.
So
that's my point.
And both of them are very young and still learning. It's a very difficult environment. Like, the fact that we are talking about them every week, and we're not the only ones, and the commenters are talking them, and people are saying quite nasty things on social media about both of them, makes it very difficult for them to kind of not to block that out. I think that's such a challenge for them, and I take responsibility on part of it. But absolutely.
Every 10 gets
someone I tweeted about it, Harry Byrne on Saturday, just saying I think he played well and should maybe start this weekend. And one person tweeted saying, like, I was part of the blue media, And then one person tweeted and said I was part of the red media. So like that's what you're getting it from. No matter what you say, you're getting flagged. I thought Rudd was the blue media personally. I was going to be like, I'll forward that onto Rudd. But
those guys are going to have scrutiny. This is good for them. Like even if it's tough for them, this will be really. It'll be a long career ahead of them.
I don't feel like what do we mean? Like they play the most important position in the national team. Like of course we're going to be talking about them. Like I don't feel like we're doing anything wrong.
No, I don't
by having robust discussions about the Ireland out half.
No, and then like when you make the
because I feel like it's framed like that sometimes.
You also say like 22 is not young. You're completely right. You look at 23. Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu is doing unbelievable stuff. Like if Sam Prendergast was doing that in games, and there was moments last year, not the same, but like the Bristol game, there was really
classy,
cool stuff. Some moments where you were like, oh, this guy you can see the upside, but week on week,
we just need to see the rest of it.
We saw less of it. So we need, I think his confidence needs to be built back up a little bit. Even the Georgia game, I know it was only an end of season tour game against a tier 2 opposition who didn't play pretty well in the day, but he did run that very well for Ireland and played well in that game. And I'm sure Crowley was kicking himself the fact that
he got
the Portugal game was such a brutal affair. So I just don't think he's been as bad maybe as it's sometimes laid out. I think there are issues with his game in the defence.
No, certainly not bad.
But,
bad is harsh, but it's the part of it's a glaring error, like a glaring part of his game that is going to cause him issues. And the problem for him is that he's really going to be judged on a few games in the year.
It's great
because we all recognise the disparity between Leinster and some of the opposition in the league, and
crazy that
at times the cup as well.
It's crazy that's the area of his game that he knows he needs to work on. His two coaches, like Jacques Nienaber at club level and Andy Farrell at international level. Surely that should be the one thing there. And like Sean O'Brien, I presume, is working one-on-one with him on his contact stuff. So he's in the right place to get. He's got the right people around him to get better at it. He's just got to show it.
Well, look, we'll discuss that, I'm sure, at length next week. Considering how much we discussed it already. You actually played a match. Neither Crowley or Prendergast played last week. It was meant to be a quick Harry Byrne, how did he play? But look, here we are. Ulster Bulls that I want to discuss. Ulster 28.
Jack Murphy.
Bull 7. Jack Murphy. No, I'd have chat for this one. But Rudd, it's funny, like when the Ulster team was named on Friday, I was looking at the team, was thinking about it, looking at the team again. And I was like, Jesus, just me, or does that team look really, really good on paper? Yeah. I was going through it, like, and just quickly been through the team, not to bore people, but like, you have a front row, okay, Sam Crean, an unproven loosehead. Rob Herring, very nuggety hugger who's always stepped up for Ireland when he's been needed. Tom O'Toole, maybe not the best scrummager, but a big unit. Henderson and Izashuku in the second row is a very good pairing. McCann, Timoney and Augustus, real good ball carrying back rows. Doak and Murphy, maybe not the best halfback pairing in the league, but Nathan Doak is a good player and Jack Murphy is learning his trade. But then it gets very interesting. You have McCluskey and Hume who've started the season really well, lots of power and pace there, and a back three of Stockdale, Balakoon and Zach Ward. I know you don't play games on paper, and part of the issue with Ulster last year is a lot of times they didn't turn up.
Yeah,
but
they were the only team. They were the only Irish team last year to put they're not in the Champions Cup. Their Champions Cup team out last week. Like that was their first team. They're going on tour to South Africa this week.
But the Bulls had a very strong team too.
No, absolutely. But like Ulster, when Ulster have everyone fit, like Ulster, Connacht, the Munster are the same. If they've everyone fit and firing and playing well, they're formidable. The problem is that once they lose one or two players in certain positions, they become much weaker because they don't have the depth that's there. But like Henderson was barely fit all last year. Stockdale gets injured every time he plays for Ireland, unfortunately. But like you see what he's able to do. He's such a talent. Like he's such a brilliant ball runner. He's still made one defensive
dropped off a kickoff as well. Like he has that. Like he still has a mistake in him. Like
yeah, he does. And like that was a bit of an Ireland audition to me. I think Osborne was the one who nailed that 15 roll over the weekend. Even though like Stockdale as a broken field runner is so dangerous and so opens teams.
Huge man.
He's so powerful. Yeah,
he is. But your point about Ulster, like Ulster were really impressive at the weekend. They didn't get to play in Edinburgh. That would have been. I would love to see how they cope in that. Away from home, probably with a few. I can't remember the team that they picked.
It wasn't as good as us. Yeah, Stockdale wasn't playing.
Richie didn't do what Stuart Lancaster did and roll the same players out again. He knew he had to win his home games, and I think he needs to make the Affidea, I think they're calling it now, that kind of a hard place to go.
Is that Ravenhill now?
Yeah, that's the sponsor.
I was like, what is that?
I'm on brand. I have to be let in. But like I think you played up there. Like it should be a really hard, intimidating place to go. It's like one of the best when it was at its peak. When like that Johan Muller was the captain and they were. I remember like they should have beaten Saracens in a European Cup quarter final and Payne was sent off. Like that was one of the best atmospheres I've ever experienced in Irish rugby. It was feral that night, and it hasn't been like that. Anytime I've been up there, and I don't get up as much as I used to because they're not as good a team, but you don't see the atmosphere like that at all anymore. And there was shades of it on Friday night because they got behind it. The team was rampant against a good Bulls team, and Ulster need momentum. Richie Murphy needs momentum. We talked about it at the start of the season. Like this whole organisation has been a bit moribund for the last couple of years, and since McFarland had a really big push and it just kind of fell off. So the signs are really good. McCluskey looked really good.
Yeah.
Really. I don't think I had him in that we picked squads in paper. No. He always does. Yeah, but he's pushing on in years, but he was phenomenal. And Zach Ward looks so exciting. Same with JJ Kenny, wasn't it? That played for Leinster, like that sevens background, that just the freedom. We're just winding up the sevens program as we kind of start seeing the products of it come through. And the pack, Augustus is such a good signing.
Yeah.
Like he just gives them so much. And then you bring Angus Bell in. If you can keep that team fit, which is the hard part.
I do worry about Izuchuko in that row. I think he's lost a bit there. I think you lose what he's special at a little bit. But I get why he's in there.
You have so much.
Yeah. But I wonder, do you keep some power on the bench?
Yeah, but I also didn't like some Bulls guy stunned his foot as he scored that try. It looks like I hope that's not a bad injury because he looked in a good bit of pain, and Richie Murphy was talking about it afterwards. So it would be interesting if he's named that squad. But
their biggest thing.
I'm bullish on that team. When I saw that team, now 28-7 is a bit misleading because the Bulls had a lot of the first half. There was a breakaway try, but they 100% deserved their win. And all of a sudden, when you see them in kind of with all their guys on the pitch, and
it's not about that with Ulster. Ulster cannot keep the guys fit. They have an issue. Either it's I don't know what it is. I don't know what the issue is. Whether it's an S&C related to training related, whatever it is. Like Munster, they cannot get their first 15 out on the pitch regularly enough.
But my concern was,
then you get into
last year a couple of occasions they did and they still lost.
But they hadn't played together. They hadn't played regularly enough.
I was wondering if some of these guys could still get to the level that we had seen them prior. Remember, there was that Maori game in the RDS before they played South Africa in 2022, and a whole cohort of Ulster players played and they got smash and they kind of lost a little bit of their pecking order place. I was wondering if they could get it back, and when I saw from what I've seen,
they're all good players though. And we've seen them do it. We actually have seen lots of these players do it regularly. But the problem is for Ulster that they haven't really done that. Like we know, like Henderson, he's always injured for Ulster his whole career. He's had he's been very unlucky with injuries. And he's a key guy for them, has been a key guy since he's been at the club, And you think of all the other guys, like Herring is a guy I think who's a really solid operator for them. It doesn't get mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned him. But you think of even Izuchuku's had fairly, Balakoon, Stockdale, poor Hume has had terrible kind of injury problems as well. These are all really, really top quality players with a high ceiling and can compete at the top level, in my opinion. But the only way you do that is by getting some kind of time together. And it's very hard to get consistency, even for top players, even for a really good 15 that you see out on the pitch, without having some time together. The start of the season is not and I have played in some unbelievable friendlies where you look at a team going you're getting beaten by Dax and you're like, Jesus, look at the team shit we had out.
Your debut, was it?
Yeah, no, but that's an example of one. But you have some proper star power out in the pitch, and it's just you need time. You need time in the pocket to get. You need there's nuances with playing with every single player. They see things differently. They do things differently. They time things differently. They sit differently in different positions. You have to have some time together, no matter how good you are. So that's going to be the hardest thing for them to get together is time, and I think if they do that, they will be a force. You can deal with one or two injuries, but having 4 or 5, which they seem to regularly have, of their big players out for long periods, disaster for them. So if they can avoid that, they will be good. I'm telling you, they'll be good.
The beauty for them this season is they would have preferred to be in the Champions Cup as an organisation, I'm sure, but the fact that they're in the Challenge Cups means we'll see this team in the URC far more frequently. They won't have to mix and match in the same way that the other provinces do. They also don't have as many players in the Ireland squad, so the games around the fringes of the Ireland internationals, they should be stronger. Be interested to see how many, if they are allowed, bring their Ireland players, however many there are, to play against the Sharks this week. If they have to come back into Dublin for a camp before flying to Chicago, that's a bit of a logistical nightmare. But they're away to the Sharks this week, so how strong do they go for those 2 games against the Sharks and the Lions? Because they're lucky. Leinster went down and played the Stormers and the Bulls. The Sharks are looking really ropey this year, although they'll probably have Etzebeth and a few boys back this week. Yeah. And the Lions are the worst of the 4. So if you got the Lions and the Sharks in your roster, you have a much better chance of winning down in South Africa. So by round 5, I think we'll have a decent sample size for all of these teams. But Ulster will be able to put that team out more frequently if they can keep them fit. But they won't. They don't have the Challenge Cup. They can get through the pool stages of the Challenge Cup without playing their top team, and then start rolling them out for the knockouts. And there's a trophy there for them if they can keep that team, because that team is capable of beating pretty much anyone on its day, particularly at home.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the US
9 and 10 is an issue, though. I think in terms of experience, especially if
don't
one of them gets injured.
Less so, no, surely.
But
Doak's a good player.
Well, last year they did the 1-2 punch of Doak and John Cooney, whereas now they've less experience behind Doak, and he's inexperienced in himself. And then
Doak inexperienced.
He's 25, he's still quite young.
3 years, 4 years at
Yeah.
that level. I don't think its time is now.
I think when you
For me, his
compare,
time is now.
I think when you compare it across the four, they're definitely lightest at that area. Especially with, like, Jack Murphy looks like a really good player. I thought he played well on on Saturday, but he has a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to get it, and he's no one with experience apart from his dad to help him along the way. Like, they're missing an experienced 10 alongside him. I mean, if they could have signed Ross Byrne, say for example, and he could have mentored Jack Murphy, not that Ross Byrne sees that as his role, but if he had a senior 10 beside him, even someone like JJ Hanneran, like, someone who can kind of mentor him along, that might help him along the way.
I still think playing.
He's quite
is better.
exposed.
I think playing is better.
Yeah,
I think playing is better, and he's probably got the luxury where, as you say, he's probably the limelight isn't as much on him because they're going to be playing Challenge Cup. The expectations around Ulster, rightly or wrongly, we're having a different discussion at the moment now about the potential, but like rightly or wrongly,
within Ulster to be quite harsh on that though. If things are not going well, they'll be looking at, that'll be a position they'll be looking at going, why don't we have a marquee 10? So, and I think they'll also look the fact that he's the coach's son as difficult the conversation.
That's a difficult, that's how he's dealing with a lot of stuff.
That was thrown to Stuart Lancaster last year.
They're all good things. They're all good things. They're all good things for him to be able to have to deal with, and if he can keep a cool head, if he can keep delivering on the basics of the game and focus on that, like, there's a good player in there. Like,
definitely a good player.
You can see that. So, like, I think it could be a perfect place for him to kind of launch into a very strong career. So,
I think Rudd's point about the URC and like not being in the Champions Cup is a good one. Like, that 7-match block that I keep referring to, like when they have those 3 interpros in a row, they should be able to pretty much pick their same team 3 weeks in a row. No one else will have that luxury. Now, I don't have the fixtures to hand exactly as to what the home and away breakdown is for them in that period, but that's a great opportunity for them. And that Edinburgh fixture, if that's rescheduled during a Six Nations window, the Edinburgh guys won't be allowed to play, but Ulster won't have as many guys in the Ireland squad. So all of a sudden, that Edinburgh away fixture might end up falling in a way that it's a lot more winnable.
Ulster beat Leinster home and away 2 seasons ago. Like, they're capable of going and getting big wins. They were just so bad last year that we've almost forgotten about it. There's definitely potential there for Ulster. And I would have been probably most down on them at the start of the year, and I still need to see more. But that performance would give you a lot of heart and, like, confidence. They need confidence. They haven't had a night like that under Richie Murphy, really. That was a bit of lift off for the era. It's a pity they're going to South Africa this week.
Like, the Bulls are one of the best teams in the league, and
it's just a pity, like, they're not going to build on it away to a weaker team, that they have to travel all the way to South Africa to face the Sharks with a couple of boys back on deck. Like, that's going to be a hard challenge for them, especially if some of the Ireland players are held back because of the logistics of getting back to get to Chicago afterwards. It's just the Chicago fixture, while it's a great thing to look forward to, it's kind of screwing everything up in terms of planning and everything, because the club, from a provincial point of view.
Very quickly on Connacht, I'm sorry, Connacht are getting the short shrift this week, but I did watch this game and it was
this 1 week they're pretty
dire, to be honest. It was 7-3 for about 2 hours of actual time because the referee's comms broke down at the end of the second half, or start of the second half, and there was a lengthy injury to Teddy Williams, the Connacht second row, so it was a long owl game. I think it started before Ireland Portugal, just before and finished about 20 minutes afterwards with all the jigs and the reels. But they actually almost snatched it, even though they were kind of second best. Like, Finn Tracy had 2 costly drops. If he held either of them, they could have taken the lead with a couple of minutes to go, and he is a good young winger. Anything jump out to you? Connacht were destroyed the breakdown. They conceded a lot of breakdown penalties.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Well, like, Ulster seemed to benefit from that, the fact that they had a week off, whereas Connacht, certainly Stuart Lancaster was saying that the week off had hurt them. I'm surprised they weren't more ready for the breakdown, because Cardiff did a number at Munster as well. And they're a good team. I think they are a good team.
I thought they might be in a bit more disarray with the coaching situation. They've dealt with it well.
Yeah.
Good team.
They're really good on the ground, and I think Callum Sheedy has just started the season really well, and that new winger they have is just
Tom Bowen.
Yeah,
he's a little phenomenon. That's what Wales could put him on one wing and Lewis Rees-Hammond on the other wing if he gets back fit, and you've suddenly got something a little bit more exciting. And Sheedy looks like he can get back into that mix as well. Connacht, I think, like Stuart Lancaster said an interesting thing that didn't really get picked up at his kind of pre-season press conference. He said, I took a lot from the top 14. It looked a little bit like a top 14 performance where he wanted to stay in the fight, kick the ball away, play in the right areas, and he stayed in the fight. And in fairness, like, for all the fact that their breakdown was destroyed, their line out wasn't great, they defended their way to being in a situation where they're 7-3 down in the last 10 minutes and had the chances to win the game. And that's kind of if you get that win, it's the kind of win that you need away from home across the season. And he walked away going, look, we managed the game quite well. In the end, they just didn't play enough They weren't accurate enough when they did have opportunities to attack, and their breakdown work was shambolic. Like, that's on the carrier, it's on the first arrivers. Like, that's you can't be turned over that frequently and away from home and expect to win a game. You can't score. You've held the opposition to 14 points and you lose the game. That's like, for a team that's known for its attacking prowess, it's really poor.
To be honest though, Rhodes, this is kind of an alternative take on that. I agree, pretty turgid viewing, and on the breakdown, completely cleaned out. So I feel like that's fixable. That's, to me, mental errors, not being ready early enough, not in good positions, not recognising there's a threat. I feel like you can fix that. But I thought the defence, I thought it was good.
Yeah, that's what.
My point is that that's been their Achilles heel the last couple of years, is that you had these kind of basketball scores and you're kind of going, like, there's no future in that. There just isn't. You need to have a few. As you said, it would have been a massive. I remember playing a few games away from home in terrible conditions with Leinster before we kind of became a bit of a force, and we got a few of those wins with like big defensive performances with someone in the bin, or what, we just kind of clung in there, and it builds massive belief. So if they could have nicked it, it would have been great for them. But I still think when they look at it, they can take some positives in that they were a bit more stingy, and they need to be more stingy. And I think I would expect Lancaster to be able to get that attack humming. Now, whether he can do both, even, it's always the big thing with Leinster, isn't it? Is that, like, can they deliver on this kind of defensive thing with Nienaber, and can they deliver on the kind of attacking prowess that we know they have?
Colin Ford was very good. Thought he won
was
the game.
good.
He won the
He was,
fight so often with that. Like, he's a player I think who could force his way into. Like, if you look at the age profile of the 12s, there is, over the next 2 years, they're going to have to find a bit of fresh blood in there. I thought
Osborne looks like he might be.
Yeah, I think this. Yeah, and like Henshaw, I thought played really well.
Actually, he was good on the weekend. We were kind of worried about him, weren't we? We were kind of saying last week.
It's an injury though. It looks like.
I think it's not serious. I don't think it's massively serious. But I just thought Ford, the way he beat the first man so frequently, got the team over the gain line, was very impressive. I want to see more Matthew Devine. I don't understand why he doesn't play more.
Sharp.
He's so sharp.
Like, Ben Murphy's good out scrum half as well. Like.
Ben Murphy's good. I think Devine has the most upside. And I thought Fintan Gunn in the Leinster game was exceptional. So
his passing is really zippy.
And a couple of breaks, he looked really sharp. But I think Devine has so much upside. And just, like, O'Gara tried to sign him last year and Larafew blocked it. Like, if you're going to block a guy's move to La Rochelle, well then get him into not saying drop Caelan Blade and Ben Murphy, but I want to see more minutes. I think he's so exciting. I think he goes off script a bit too much, which in Irish rugby is the big no-no, but I think sometimes Irish rugby teams need a bit more going off script and changing the picture for the opposition. He's an absolute demon. I think he's such a threatening player.
It would actually benefit Irish rugby for Ben Murphy to go to Ulster and reunite with his dad and brother, honestly, because then you'd have, like, Ulster kind of need another scrum half there with Doak, and then Connacht.
Lovely 1-2 punch with Doak and him.
And then you'd have like Devine and Caelan Blade, who are, Caelan Blade is not done yet. Like, he's still a good player.
Doak always feels more like in the Murray mold to me.
Yeah,
that big kicking game. He's kind of more fluid, and
he's kind of like a Murray Casey dynamic.
Exactly. And you can up the tempo.
I think he must have just watched Ruan Pienaar over and over again, because
that's exactly. Yeah, it's a good.
And I think the other one is get Joey Carberry back, either in Connacht or Ulster as well, to kind of bolster the out half, to add another name to the conversation, but also have if you have a senior Joey Carberry after 2 years in France working alongside Jack Murphy, you've got a really good, a much better picture in terms of your out halves as well. He's up this year, and I think they got to try and get him back, because you can't write him off at this age. Sorry, his contract's up, so that I'm sure he'll have an offer on the table. Like, he's English qualified, so that makes him really attractive to Premiership teams as well. But I think Humphreys needs to be trying to get him back, because you need as many people in that conversation. Particularly, we've just talked about how inexperienced and young the 10s that are there are. He's 30. He'll be 30 by the time he comes back. He's had 2 years in France. He's made all the mistakes. He's done all the stuff at this stage. He's had all the adversity, and so many of our 10s get better after 30. Like, it's definitely way too soon to write someone like that off. So if the opportunity's there to get, and I think Connacht and Ulster both need an experienced 10. I don't know what Jack Harty's future is beyond this season. He's had a couple of difficult years. Didn't think he had a terrible game on Saturday. He was okay, but there's there's an opening there for him to either work with Richie, who he would have come through with Ireland, or Stuart Lancaster if they can convince him. So that's another one. I think that would be a shrewd move. If we are playing kind of fantasy move the players, I think that would be one to get back.
Yeah, another one to add to the out half chat if it comes to pass. As if the out half chat.
Good luck getting 30 minutes.
Can't get it any longer. We'll wrap it up there, guys. Rod, thanks so much for coming in, Luke.
That's awesome, Rod.
Good to see you again. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you again next week after Leinster and Munster. We'll go through all the talking points from Croke Park. See you then.